So is this really the worst it's ever been, and how can these hospitals be better protected? I spoke to the Director of Physicians for Human Rights, Widney Brown.
Well, certainly what we're seeing in Syria, where we've seen a systematic campaign over the last 4.5 years, attacking hospitals, clinics, ambulances, as well as detaining doctors, is one of the worst cases we've ever seen. And I think because there's been no strong response from the UN Security Council with regard to these attacks, we're seeing them now develop in other places such as Yemen, where the Saudi-led coalition there is also attacking hospitals in Yemen. And then we're seeing some one-offs, such as the bombing of the MSF hospital in Afghanistan by the US military.
So who enforces the protection and the security of hospitals? If their locations are well known, satellite coordinates are out there, what more can be done to protect them? Or is it going to have to come from within?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because the UN Security Council, of course, is charged with maintaining international peace and security. And it has measures that it can take to try to impose sanctions on governments and other armed groups that are violating the laws of war. Now, the International Committee of the Red Cross is really the body that's expert on the laws of war, and they actually have a fact-finding mission. This is the International Humanitarian Fact-Finding Commission, which MSF has asked that they actually investigate the attack in Kunduz. Now, they can't stop them from happening, but they certainly can document whether the attack amounted to a war crime. But really, it's the parties themselves who should be bound by the laws of war and should be monitoring themselves.
Are hospitals in these conflict zones a fair game? We recently saw a video of disguised Israeli commandos storming into a Palestinian hospital to make an arrest. Are the days of hospitals being neutral zones over?
Well, we're worried about this becoming the new normal in conflict, partly because it's incredibly effective. When you destroy a hospital, you destroy a safe civilian space where people can go to be treated for acute injuries that may be as a result of the conflict, or for chronic health conditions that they just need. Just because you live in a war zone doesn't mean that you don't have other illnesses. In fact, living in a conflict zone is rather bad for your health. So we are concerned about this becoming a new normal and undermining a norm that's been around for 150 years.
You mentioned the UN Security Council could impose sanctions. Obviously, they have not, as you mentioned, but what other recourse do victims or aid organizations have when people die, like in the case with that Doctors Without Borders hospital in Kunduz, Afghanistan? You know, the U.S. military apologized, but, you know, words aren't enough. So could this go perhaps to the International Criminal Court?
A very good question. It's unlikely that any case involving the United States will end up before the International Criminal Court because the U.S. has not ratified it, and the Security Council that the UN is a permanent member on would have to make the referral. So the U.S. would obviously veto any referral of a situation that involved the U.S. That does not mean, though, that the victims and surviving family members cannot try to bring a case in a court, because a deliberate attack on a hospital is a war crime, meaning it's a crime under international law, and in theory, any government could claim jurisdiction over some of these crimes and actually prosecute them, so that there could be, among other things, accountability for the perpetrators and justice for the victims, including reparations.
All right, we'll leave it there. Widney Brown, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight.
Sure, thank you.